अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to NL Hafta from a hot, searing Delhi. Those who were celebrating a very pleasant beginning of May, well, welcome to reality. Today we'll be joined by Suhasini Haidar, who I shall introduce later formally, and Anand Vardhan, who will be joining us soon. But before we get into the introductions and Hafta discussions, I would like to remind everybody that this is the third week of the Press Freedom Month. We had a special appeal, we had targets set that in this Press Freedom Month we'd like to get 1,000 more subscribers because, like you know, last year we saw a dip, which was unfortunate. So I hope you guys are convincing your friends, family. So now I shall read from a script, and while I'm reading this, there is a QR code on the screen and there's a link you can click or share with your friends. Picture this, you're a journalist with an independent media organization. You don't take ads. So unlike most others, you've already lost a major source of revenue. It's strings attached revenue, but it's not coming. You're bootstrapped but ambitious, butting heads with those in power, pursuing journalism because journalism matters, not for anything else. That's one day in the life of News Laundry and News Minute. And we wouldn't have it any other way. Now, thousands of you are supporting us, but it would be great if a few thousand more did. Because we need to grow, we need to have reporters in every state, and we need to have the kind of width of programming which has a bigger impact. Because as you can see, what's happened with journalism was demonstrated. We shall discuss that later in the show. So if you are listening to this, you can scan this QR code, click on the link, and share with your friends and family. Buy one News Laundry, News Minute joint subscription. We will make it worth your while. With that, Manisha, let's get to the headlines.
Yes, it's been an action-packed week. During his 5-nation tour, Prime Minister Modi visited Norway for the third India-Nordic summit, but the trip made headlines for a tense media moment during a joint press conference. As PM was leaving, Norwegian journalist Helle Ling, who's become quite popular in India now, asked why he wouldn't take questions from the
and unpopular, both.
Popular and unpopular, both. So she asked him why he wouldn't take questions from the freest press in the world. The BJP later clarified that the briefing format did not include a Q&A question for either leader. And meanwhile, there was an MEA press conference also where this journalist was invited, where the spokesperson just went on and on and on about yoga and land of
It was embarrassing to watch, if you ask me.
So we will have Suhasini with us, who'll tell us what happened because she was there.
She was in the room.
Yeah, she was in the room. An online controversy erupted after CJI Suryakant, while pulling up a lawyer for pursuing the designation of senior advocate, made some remarks. He told this particular advocate that there are already parasites in society who attack the system and you want to join hands with them. There are youngsters like cockroaches who don't get any employment and don't have any place in the profession. He meant the legal profession. Some of them become media, some of them become social media, some of them become RTI activists. And this, of course, snowballed into a controversy. Later on, the CJI clarified that this comment was not against the youth in general, but against people who join the law profession and then don't get to actually lawyer, and then they become activists and journalists. Soon after this, an online movement started by Abhijit Dipke, Cockroach Janta Party, went completely viral. The parody page blew up online, and within weeks, it has more followers than BJP. It's double the followers of BJP actually. It has 18 million followers on Instagram.
My God.
And the X account of Cockroach Janta Party was blocked because of some, apparently the IB told the NIA, told the Ministry of
National Security.
That is a national security threat.
Cockroach Janta Party Twitter account is national security threat, which is why we are so strong in national security. Modi's entire pitch was, without me, India would collapse.
And Instagram is full of now cockroach reels, cockroach videos, cockroaches from UP, Rajasthan, maybe cockroach. Everyone's like, it's just hard to escape cockroach on Instagram right now.
Yes,
You
and
want to
Anand
come?
has joined us.
Yeah.
Please come join us,
Come
Anand.
join us.
Hmm.
The Supreme Court has refused to change its earlier order that stray dogs picked up by municipal authorities should not be released back into the same area after sterilization. Rejecting petitions that sought modifications to the ruling, a bench of Justices Vikram Nath, Sandeep Mehta, N.V. Anjaria said the government cannot remain a passive spectator while people face the threat of stray dog attack in public spaces. And they also said the right to life includes the right to move freely in public without living in fear of being attacked.
And Bhagwant Maan has jumped on this bandwagon and he said we will remove all stray dogs. Like, was it specifically directed to Punjab? Like, why is he so excited
No.
about this? I don't
I think
know.
it's such a polarizing
Hmm.
issue, and it's probably has a lot of resonance among the older people. They want the dogs to be out. So
Yeah, I don't know about the dogs, but I know that there was. It was an MCD order. I don't know, it was not a court order that don't feed cows and pigeons on the roads. At least the drive from my house to office, there are three roundabouts which are full of rotting food,
yeah,
cows, birds, the smell
and
because of rotting food. And I don't know, and I see some people stopping in cars and giving food there. I really don't get it, man. It is.
I don't get feeding pigeons. Honestly, I don't know why so many people feed pigeons. Is
I
it a
think
religious thing? Like, do you
I
have
know
to?
Amrish Puri in Dilwale. He might have set the trend. Hmm.
The West Bengal government has made singing of Vande Mataram mandatory in all madrasas that come under State's Minority Affairs and Madrasa Education Department. And the opposition there has said that it's not good to force this on minority institutions. 2 MLAs from the Congress were sworn into the Tamil Nadu cabinet led by TVK government. This is the first time in 59 years that the party will be part of the state cabinet. The government also included 7 Dalit ministers into the Tamil Nadu cabinet. A criminal contempt petition has been filed in the Delhi High Court against Arvind Kejriwal and journalist Saurav Das, accusing them of running a coordinated campaign against Justice Swarnakanta Sharma.
Today it's being heard
Yeah,
apparently
yeah.
right now as we're recording this.
Delhi's air pollution is creeping up again. With the air quality index slipping into the poor category, the Commission of Air Quality Management has imposed stage 1 restrictions on the GRAP across Delhi and NCR. And Newslaundry has an excellent investigation on our campaign Fight to Breathe. We have looked at 5 years of data of pregnancies in Delhi across Delhi hospitals, and we found an increase of 21% in rise in preterm births. We've spoken to a lot of gynecologists who've said that we are losing babies. We cannot explain why. They have attended to stillbirths. One of the case studies is specifically harrowing, where there's a preterm birth and the diagnosis is respiratory disorder for the mother because of coughing and the kind of stress that it can put on you. So this is right now very basic RTI data that tells us very clearly there's an increase in preterm births. But all doctors we spoke to said that we know this is happening. We know that pollution is severely impacting women. We are seeing stillbirths. We cannot explain why healthy mothers are giving birth to stillborn children. We cannot explain these rise in preterm birth. So it's a very good investigation. Do read it. And I hope.
And do share it with those, I will not call them educated, but people who had the privilege of going to school, colleges, but yet say, hum to phodenge patake because it jalaos the liberals. People with such enormous brains must read these kind of reports.
The Central Information Commission ruled that BCCI is not a public authority under the RTI Act, meaning it is not required to respond to queries filed under the transparency law.
Yay. So we don't know what happens to all the money that goes to BCCI.
The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a plea challenging the preventive detention of former journalist Satyam Verma under the NSA. He was picked up because of his alleged role in the Noida workers' protest. He's supposed to be the mastermind. So there's a conspiracy case along with the
Any
arson
protest
and
that happens
rioting.
has a mastermind.
Yeah.
I guess for a government that has very few minds,
Everything
anything
is a
that gets
mastermind.
organized is a mastermind.
The CBSE has made it compulsory for class 9 students to study 3 languages starting July 1. And at least 2 of those 3 languages must be Indian languages. Students can still choose a foreign language, but only as a third language if the other 2 are Indian languages. So I don't know why poor students are being burdened with this in class 9. Like, why should they learn 3 languages? What is it?
But
How is it helping them?
so far it was only till class 8, right? I mean, when I was in school, you had third language which you had to...
You had a second language, no? English, Hindi, and then...
No, we had a third language.
You had a third
language, but it wasn't at board level. You could take it later, but it was compulsory till class 8.
The India-Africa summit that was supposed to take place in New Delhi next week has now been postponed due to the Ebola outbreak in parts of Africa. The FBI said it had shut down a call center operating in India that allegedly targeted hundreds of elderly Americans through fake tech support scams, cheating them out of millions of dollars.
More jobs lost. Modi ji, kariye yaar. Please tell your friend that if he can, rip off the American Janta. I don't know whether you saw what he did with this new fund where his Justice Department sued his tax department, got $1.8 billion of slush funds, which he can give to anyone he wants. And he said he will give it as damages to those who stormed the Capitol. It's so brazen.
Yeah, so if he can do it, then why can't we
so
do
Modi
it?
ji, aap boliye ki we should also be allowed to, rip off Americans and create jobs.
Israel's national security minister is facing criticism both at home and abroad after releasing videos mocking detained Gaza flotilla activists. The clips drew sharp rebuke from Benjamin Netanyahu and sparked international backlash over the treatment of the detainees. Giorgia Meloni called the treatment of the protesters intolerable and said it violated human dignity. She was also in the headlines in India for Melody. We can discuss that also. Britain's foreign secretary said she was truly appalled by the footage, adding it violated the most basic standards of respect and dignity.
Yeah, so we shall get into the discussion and we'll start with the Indian Prime Minister's 5-nation tour, purpose, what it achieved, etc. But on this, I was for a change, anything that you say about Israel is anti-Semitic, that's become the kuch bola anti-Semitic. Of course, the video is disgusting. A cabinet minister put that out, is disgusting. And there have been a few countries that have asked for him to be sanctioned. But I was just saying that we keep talking about double standards. And there are often double standards. But this is also an example of double standards that work in India's favor. Some Indian members who are in positions of power, who are ministers at the state level or the cabinet level, have tweeted out far more disgusting videos. But it doesn't become an international event and say they should be sanctioned. You fly under the radar because, guys, India doesn't really matter in the larger context. We keep saying that we are... And that's why they get away with it. If this is a standard for a sanction, Himanta Biswa Sarma should be sanctioned. I'm sure he has friends and family who go abroad. So, double standards also sometimes work in our favor. Hi, Suhasini is here. Welcome, Suhasini Haidar joins us after her 2-nation, 3-nation, 1-nation or 5-nation tour, Suhasini?
I only went to 1 nation.
Oh, damn. So, Suhasini, as you all know, is an Indian journalist and foreign affairs expert. She is serving as the diplomatic affairs editor at The Hindu. She, in the past, had a show primetime on CNN and IBN. And she has also worked with CNN International. So, thank you for joining us. And, of course, Anand is here with us as well. We're just going to get into the entire foreign trip and the fallout, which no one saw coming with that young journalist being attacked and praised both. But I was just saying the internal security minister of Israel who put out that horrible video with the flotilla activists. And in fact, some videos have emerged of how they were treated in prison. They have bruise marks, etc. The rebuke it got from within and from Italy, from Britain. There may be sanctions. Apparently, I think Italy's already planned to sanction him. I was just saying that, double standards can work in India's favor as well. There are Indian ministers, whether at the state level or the national level, who in the past have tweeted stuff that is far worse. It may not be an actual, beating up a person, but stuff that is equally objectionable. But it doesn't get in the international, the 5 nations don't say what is happening. This is because it's Israel and Gaza, everyone's pounced on it. So one could say that double standards both ways, right? Sometimes our people put out stuff, but no one really cares because it's not such an international event. It's just the act doesn't matter. The context matters, right? Before we jump onto and say everything is a double standard.
I have to agree. And the truth is, this is worldwide. How we see other people is also there is a double standard. We will accept certain things for the US president to say about us, which we will not accept from some other country.
Right.
It's not as if double standards don't exist. I think we have to focus on the on actually the conversation within the country, rather than just always talking about, they said this to us. They said, yeah, there are lots of indexes out there.
Yeah.
And as you pointed out, and I think my colleague Varghese George has written in the Hindu today, if you want to reject the RSF Media Freedom Index, for example, also reject the ease of doing business ranking getting better. Reject international honors that you get in various countries. So I think it's these things have to be just taken in that moment. You say, okay, this is what has come out, and not essentially expect that there's going to be some grand global standard.
Right.
Where there is a global standard, if you ask me, is on the construct of democracy, a modern construct, a construct of what is human rights, what is child rights. And yes, not every country, like you've given the Israel example, actually follows these, adheres to these, but we all know what they are.
Manisha, you have a view on this?
No,
Have you seen the video, by the way?
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with Suhasini in that sense that I don't even look at the international order because if you look at double standards, for example, the US will always, elections in Pakistan are always free and fair. There'll be no statement issued on that. But elections in Bangladesh always become like this hyped up thing. We're keeping a watch. We're seeing who's winning. So there is a double standard, but our own problems, I think, have to be sorted out within, and I have no expectation from America to, even when during Biden's time where there would be like stray comments on press freedom or whatever, they did make a lot of accommodations with Modi in terms of taking questions from the press. They were okay looking away at a lot of things. So problems with our own politics in terms of how our ministers talk about our minorities in the country, or the kind of vile utterances that we've seen over the last decade, especially, those things I think have to be sorted here. No foreign power can call us out on it.
Anand, you have a view on it?
No, I think this has an assumption that there is a global order, and it is a fantasy of the globalism that there should be an uniform standard. This is not. Means international order is still a collection of national orders. So we are a system of nations, and people who think that they are more globalist in their nature are a citizen of nowhere. A citizen of the world is a citizen of nowhere. So I think that's more of a moralist posturing than rooted in realities.
Right. So now let's get into the discussion. Before that, just want to remind everybody we have 2 new reports that I would highly recommend you read. One is by my former boss, Alpana Kishore, when I was at Newstrack. Mission Vatican in Kashi, the battle between ideology and faith. It is not paywalled. It is just behind a login. And I'll be very transparent. It's behind a login, so we can get your email ID and try to convince you to subscribe, because it's not so easy to do it in the first shot. So do read it. It is, as usual, Alpana was one of the finest writers we had in Newstrack, done by her, and tells you a lot about our ruling dispensation's view of history, culture, aesthetic, everything. By the way, this week also Nirman Bhavan came down, right? Anybody saw that aerial picture? And the second is A Trail of Grief, Little Accountability, the Marion biotech story after 68 children's death. This is a really disturbing story of the impunity and the complete lack of respect to life that goes with our global standard, Indian global standard of what matters, what doesn't. This is behind paywall, Manisha?
No, this is not behind the paywall.
This is not behind paywall. So do check out both these stories. And this week on South Central, because now we have 2 podcasts with our partner organization, the News Minute. The News Minute this week will be discussing TVK's online army and the Special Intensive Revision SIR. So you can tune into South Central this week to get more on that. On Hafta, we'll be discussing press freedom triggered by what happened in Norway and the foreign trip. So Suhasini, let's start with how was otherwise the tour was there. Before we get into what should have been a distraction has become the main story, what were the other things on the agenda? What was achieved? What was not achieved? Norway has a lot of energy, right? Any chance they're giving us any oil?
Not as a result of this trip, we didn't hear any announcements on that. Norway right now is the largest supplier to Europe. And they have a huge oil reserves, but they haven't necessarily decided to sell to us, or nor have we asked, because the pricing of these things. I think the trip was threefold. One was a kind of makeup for last year, because this particular trip was to have happened a year ago, last May, and had to be put off between Pahalgam terror attack and the Pande India-Pakistan conflict with Operation Sindoor. So that was the first, that this was a makeup. Prime Minister Modi was supposed to go to Oslo at that time and meet with the Nordic leaders, so the Nordic India Summit, as well as the Netherlands trip. The second part, I think, is about this kind of idea in the world that everyone's diversifying. India and Europe are definitely the flavor of this year. It began with the German Chancellor coming. We've had other leaders from Europe coming to India in this first half of the year. The India-EU, European Union, FTA being announced in January. It's still to be ratified and signed. So there's been a very big focus on Europe. I think External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has traveled to 8 or 10 European countries just this year. Prime Minister Modi has gone now to this 4-nation in Europe plus UAE trip. He's going back in June to Europe for the G7 in France. I think he's going to Slovakia as well, and maybe another European country. And then he's expected to go later in the year to Brussels when this FTA is actually ready to be signed. So that's the second part, I think, of this visit. The third is obviously that the government was looking for some, I think they were looking to show that this was a visit to seek new sources of oil given what's happened in the Hormuz Strait. So that was played up. I mean, in the UAE visit, for example, they talked about strategic petroleum reserves of the UAE up to, I've forgotten the exact figure, but I think it was 30 million tons or something, which will be stored in India. I mean, not to be the cynic here, but we had exactly the same agreement with the Saudis about 10 years ago. They also said Aramco will keep its strategic petroleum reserves in India. But at the end of the day, what it requires is infrastructure in India. It needs those reserves to be built. So eventually only, I think, some 3 million tons were kept somewhere in Karnataka. But it was very much about the optics of the Prime Minister going out there and looking for investment, looking for trade, looking for oil as well.
Well, it is always about optics.
Renewable energy as well. Sorry, that's what the Nordics are known for.
On this foreign trip, anything, Manisha, that you read, saw, observed?
I think a couple of things. One is right after the speech asking Indians to not buy gold, he went and not do foreign trips. He was there. And the one address that he did in the Netherlands at Hague with NRIs, where he said that this is the decade of destruction and crisis and we had COVID, and basically bracing. I don't know why these conversations we're not having in our own country, where one hopes he gives a press conference and says all this. But even to our own people, it's always that we're doing so well, we're going to do this and that. But to NRIs, you're saying that there could be like extreme poverty. All the gains of the last decade will be lost. What gains we made and what we lose, I don't know, because I think today Surjit Bhalla has written a column in the Express saying that you're winning elections but you're losing the economy.
Yeah.
So these utterances abroad, which are stark, dire, versus what we hear here, is just, bizarre. And secondly, I think the whole Norwegian journalist thing.
Yeah, we'll discuss that, because
really kind of,
Suhasini was in the room. I'd like to hear about that. But
to me, that was really striking.
other than that, what do you make of this address at The Hague, and any gains from this trip of Modi after telling us not to travel?
the gains we made in the last decade, I think he made that in a global context. That the say the march of the global economy led to some alleviation of global poverty. So that I think his context was global there, not Indian, and that would be somehow negated by the crises which are cropping up after 2-3 years, like after COVID. This, so that was the. So I think some of these visits, except one, I think, were pre-planned. So he had to take it. Means the trips are
Scheduled way before.
scheduled earlier. So as the head of the government, he had to go. So I think that if something of a say very a scale of national crisis or emergency was there, which in government's estimate this is not, means the energy crisis that we are going through. So otherwise the schedule was kept.
Right. So, of course, whether the crisis or not depends on who you speak with. I've been spending a lot of time speaking with investors, big and small, people in all sorts of organizations, including big tech, high up people in the policy space. They are not saying very good things. So, I don't know what we're all bracing for. But of course, our government will tell us nothing. But I also think it's not that they don't tell us anything. I think generally Modi doesn't understand anything. He has no idea what's going to happen. You know, that Iron Man film where they had this guy called which is played by Ben Kingsley. He looks like a very scary villain, but actually he doesn't know anything what's happening. So, but yeah, let's get to the bit of what happened to this young journalist whose name I always seem to mispronounce. You were in the room, Suhasini. What happened? And then we can get into the appropriateness, inappropriateness, how it should have been asked, how we should have responded. And by we, I mean a foreign, that Mr. Thomas. Yeah. So what happened exactly?
So, I mean, all I know is there was this idea of a press statement. You know, we have so normalized in the Indian media this idea that the Prime Minister doesn't take questions, unscripted questions, that, to be honest, we didn't really, we didn't clock how big a deal it was for
Other countries.
Europeans. So there was already a preamble. In Netherlands, for example, the MEA was asked. They didn't accost the Prime Minister, but they accosted the MEA and said, why does he not take questions? At one point, their Prime Minister, Rob Jetton, had spoken to his media, because, this is the thing that one has to remember, that Prime Minister Modi walks off without answering questions.
But their Prime Minister
people he's standing with have to answer, because their press is pretty tough. And so Rob Jetton went and spoke in the government house. He spoke to journalists, and he said that I raised concerns about human rights in India, or minority rights in particular, and press freedoms in India. And these questions were put then to the MEA. The MEA's secretary said, these were not raised in any questions with us, and then gave that original remark where he said, these questions are posed by people who are ignorant about India. And to that, another journalist said, but my colleague is not posing the question to you. My colleague and I are asking, how do you respond to our Prime Minister posing the question? Are you saying our Prime Minister is ignorant?
Oh, they asked that? That was
It's all there. The transcript is there.
Right.
Anyway, so that was the preamble to this visit. The next day in Sweden, there was no such thing. There was no questions being asked. But the photographs of, there was Ursula von der Leyen, there was this Swedish Prime Minister, Christopherson, I think, and there was Prime Minister Modi. And the photograph that they put out was very starkly of a teleprompter in front of Prime Minister Modi, almost eclipsing his face.
Yeah.
Now, that again was something new, firstly, for those journalists, because they were like, what is a teleprompter doing here even? And, it's not one teleprompter, there are two, and they're like tree trunks. It's very difficult to avoid them. Then we come to Norway. So this was the third leg of his visit, and we were brought. I should be clear. We were invited by the Norwegian government. Normally, we travel to cover the Prime Minister, but in a lot of places, if I go just as an independent journalist or from a non-government newspaper, we're considered non-official media, non-accredited. So you don't get access. So the only way really to cover a prime ministerial visit, other visits you can figure out for yourself, but a prime ministerial visit, the only way to cover it is if that government invites you.
So either our government or that government. That's the only way to do it, right?
Well, because of the lack of access. And sure, you'll even do that. You'll go to certain, like China, I think everybody sends a journalist. US, everybody sends a journalist. Moscow, we went completely on our own, but with the understanding that the Russians would give us accreditation. But we didn't actually get access in that visit to anything further than the media center.
Right.
But it was to be in Moscow at that time. So every trip the Prime Minister takes, and he takes several, you have to judge for yourself what is the cost-benefit analysis and how you can cover it best. Because a lot of times all the information is available sitting in Delhi. The press conferences of the MEA are live, the events are all live, the Prime Minister makes only scripted remarks, and those come on in your inbox. So we had gone there to cover this press conference, and when we walked in, fair enough, there were those two podiums, and then there were the two teleprompters there. And the journalists there, and it wasn't just Hella, the young girl who asked the question, but there were other Norwegian journalists in the same row as us. And they certainly asked me at the beginning, did you know that there's not going to be any questions? So I said, actually, there never is.
It's normal. Welcome to the party. Hamara to aise hi hota hai.
I was a bit surprised that they were surprised. Then they said, but you've just come with him. Didn't you ask him any questions? I said, I didn't just come. I mean, we don't, we have forgotten what life was, what is the word?
Pre-2014.
So, I mean, it was, so I said, yeah, we didn't come with him. We've come, in fact, we've been invited by your government. And they kept asking me again and again, but how does he not answer questions? Because our Prime Minister has to answer questions. So I said, fine, but, we'll see if it'll be very awkward if, one leader is not taking questions, one leader is taking questions. So I said, we'll see how this goes. And then we had this where both made press statements, and then they walked off the stage. As they were walking off the stage, this young girl sprung up and said what I think it sounds very patronizing, that why doesn't India take questions from the world's freest press or whatever.
Prime Minister Modi, why don't you take some questions from the freest press in the world?
And she kept making this point that you're 157th and we're one on the list kind of thing. And she went behind him, which again, we never think of doing, once the Prime Minister's left the room, who's going to run behind him? She was, she nearly got to the left, and you've seen the video because she's actually taken the video. She came back and she said, I'm really surprised your Prime Minister didn't take questions, but our Prime Minister will take questions. So I said, no, but he didn't. He just left. She said he's coming back. And sure enough, within 2 minutes of seeing off Prime Minister Modi,
he came back.
Prime Minister Storer came back into the room. And he spoke to the Norwegian press. He didn't speak to the Indian press. So he gave interviews in Norwegian to, I think, 3 journalists who were over there. And Hella also spoke to him. She then came back and she said, and that's the second tweet, I think the video of which you probably have seen. And she said to one of my colleagues who had also come from India, she had said, now you ask Prime Minister Storer a question. And she got ready to film that. And that's the voice you hear on that video saying, Prime Minister Storer, will you not give an interview to the Indian journalists and show them how it is done in Norway?
Sorry, Mr. Prime Minister, 1 minute, sir. Taking a picture.
Why don't you take a few questions from the Indian reporters and show them how we do it here in Norway? Yes.
Again,
really?
I mean, I felt it a bit patronizing, but at that point he came. My colleague put out his hand and he shook his hand, but he walked on. And then I tried to ask a question because that's what journalists do. If somebody's in front of you, you'll ask the question. So I tried to ask a question, and he smiled at me and he walked off. But that was the first event. There was the next event. His press people said to me, he's really running late and he's got to get to that next event, which is the business summit. Or I think first they were going for that award at the palace for Prime Minister Modi, and then they were going to come to the business summit. So we had to leave to the business summit. At the business summit, even before the leaders had come, the Prime Minister of Norway's press team got in touch with us and said he would really like to speak to the Indian media. So they told us where we should wait, and they brought him to us. And then he took, I think there were 5 of us, and he took 5 questions from all of us, and then did a little bit of chatting off the record as well. The scene then changes to the Indian official media center in the hotel where Prime Minister Modi was staying, and the MEA press conference. Now, I want to make the point that there was 7 hours or something between that first, Hella standing up and asking that question and the MEA briefing. And presumably the Prime Minister's handlers and the MEA's, sort of senior officials had enough time to think about what their response would be, because in between all of this, and please stop me when I bore you, but in between all of this, Hella's tweets had gone out and caused all this outrage.
Yeah.
And the Indian embassy in Oslo responded.
Yeah, they retweeted it saying,
said, please come to our MEA press conference. And she wrote and said, I've already registered, so I'll be there. So they had a good 5-6 hours to prepare for what their response would be, and they chose the response that they gave. I also want to make the point
Imagine.
that
the best minds who've cracked UPSC came up with that response.
I actually asked a question. One of my questions was about what Mr. Storer had said on the differences. He said India and Norway don't see eye to eye on many issues. So I asked the MEA, what do you read that differences as? Is it about Russia? Is it about press freedoms? What is it about? And my second question was that you have seen criticism in Netherlands and now in Norway to the fact that Prime Minister Modi is not answering questions at a press conference. Have any of your host countries requested Prime Minister Modi to answer questions? And are you thinking of revising your policy? Because my point was, if your host is not pushing it, then, Norway can keep talking about freedom and whatever, but they're not also making a big deal. You're not answering questions. So then straight after I asked the question came Hella's second question, which was fairly, it was vague. But she was obviously by then had, she'd been trolled on Twitter, and she was
Her
very
family,
worked up,
all sorts of threats, usual what our IT cells are so famous for the world
doxing
over.
of photos on vacation. It's all aimed in a certain way, and then you're this agent, that agent. I what really came through for me was how much we have normalized this behavior.
Yeah, exactly. It is so alien to people who are not from your journalists. They're like shocked at the kind of barrage.
I get called 10 times worse things on an hourly basis. It's not something that you can continue to engage with. But you could see in those first few hours she was engaging, and her follower list was just climbing up. Anyway, not to put a fine word on it, and I'm a journalist. She's a journalist. She can defend herself, and I think she has. But she asked this very vague question, like, why should we trust you? And what do you have to say about human rights? That wasn't exactly a specific question to answer to. So I would think it would be even easier for the MEA to have a pro forma response. India stands by its record on human rights. India has
the only surviving democracy. On the top of my head, I can come up with things in the subcontinent.
So you say those things, you get out of it, and you say, let's move on to the next question.
Rather than this outrage by this, very cute-looking fellow who's
CB George
doesn't do really anyway. But
he was obviously incensed by the tone. that she employed. And she didn't just have a tone. She said, no, you've got to answer me right now because I have counter questions for you. And otherwise, you will just get away by making an answer. And then it just became this kind of, this diatribe follow. So the rest of it, everyone has seen on live television or otherwise. So I won't go into the entire response, but we all know 18 minutes and 46 seconds was one single train of thought.
And then there was a bunch of primetime, debates around this, discussions around this, and she appeared on few of them. But, I just want to go around the panel once. The one point I do want to make, and I hope this clip goes on social media, producer puts it. I saw this young anchor at NDTV interviewing Hela, and
I saw the whole
she
interview.
was, I felt bad for that girl because clearly Rahul Kamal or whoever has put her there or whatever, because...
Was it designed to go viral from the very beginning? Was it meant to serve the theatrics as being the primary goal? In fact, that publication, which was founded in 1884, actually has deep linkages to the Norwegian Labour Party. In fact, it was a mouthpiece of the Norwegian Labour Party. Enjoying Indian curries and doing yoga doesn't qualify as knowing India. Have you been to India?
At least this Norwegian journalist had the guts to come on your show. Tell your boss Rahul Kamal, who is so cowardly, he does not want to talk. Because they will have no Arnab, Navika. At the media, we've called all these people. A few of them have said yes and later call me and say, our management has said we cannot come. So, children, before you come on prime time and start yapping away, tell your bosses, if they have the guts or the courage that this young journalists show, why don't you come and answer questions? No journalist in India does. In fact, Suhasini, you should have taken a cue from our journalists. When the Norwegian journalist started questioning you, should have just walked off. I'm not going to answer your questions. But what do you make of this? And of course, what we should be so proud of is that every foreign journalist or writer knows, it'll be liable if I say who is responsible, but we all know who organizes this. And off the record, someone from a very prominent part in India has also told me this is how they organize it. The most vile, disgusting threats, including the kind of language used by a gentleman, I won't call him gentleman, and an FIR should be registered against him. To the time of this recording, it has not. Who says far worse stuff? They're all favorites of our ruling party. So that is what has made us famous.
Yeah, but Abhinandan, I want to make that differentiation because it's about who you should respond to. And half the problem is that we get into debates where we take the focus away. So the focus became, I didn't watch these shows that you were speaking about in India because I was there, but the focus becomes about that journalist. Who is she? What is her background? You remember the Wall Street journalist who asked that one question about minority rights in Washington. And in no time at all, who she was, who she represented, all of that came out, right? What was her background? And of course, this is her religion and this is where her parents came from, all of that. In this Heller case, we see the same. Where does she go on vacation? What is the left-wing journal that she represents? Where was she before this? So that kind of thing is actually taking the focus away. And all these channels you're talking about here who make her the focus by interviewing her and all the rest. Do you expect anyone in India to get that kind of platform if they were going to be critical without there being some other reason for it? The focus is on her, on the journalist, because they don't want the focus to be on the basic question. So why doesn't your prime minister take unscripted questions?
Exactly.
And there was an interview that Prime Minister Modi gave to India Today, in which he said 2 or 3 things, and there was no pushback to them. He said, the fact is the journalists just have opinions, and it's very much about who the journalist is today. So he made it also about, let's go find who the journalist is. It's not about what the question is.
Yeah.
It's about
and
who
all
is the
these
what
top
is their
guys.
background.
Anjana, Rahul Kaval.
I find I find this debate in India too has become about who is the journalist, how dare Norway say this, who is the freedom index. It's not about her question or about the freedom.
The Prime Minister.
It is about the fact, it is about the question. You
Take
can
a question.
answer it differently. You can say there's no reason Xi Jinping doesn't take unscripted questions.
Yeah.
There are so many leaders in the world I can mention who don't take unscripted questions. Putin actually does. But there's a different kind of worry over there on press freedom. My point is, you can answer that question in 30 ways, but that is the question.
Yeah.
It is not who is this, what is that, should we respond to this very patronizing racist idea that only Anglo-Saxon countries think that they can
सब कुछ basically कुछ भी हो जाए
themselves.
racism बोल दो. This is like if you want to criticize
And, you know,
Israel,
and wrap
anti-Semitic हो
ourselves
गया.
in the national flag. This is not about that. And so I agree with a lot of what you guys were saying. But again, I just think we have to take the focus away and have the conversation within India about why it is okay to not have unscripted press conferences, meet people,
We've done that
journalists,
forever, Suhasini.
because that is our job.
I wrote a full piece on this in 2014 when Prime Minister cancelled a scheduled event where already money had been spent and a set worth 8 lakhs put up.
Wow.
So we've been trying since 2014. But yeah, Manisha, you were saying.
So, a couple of things. One, on this Sibby Matthew gentleman from the MEA. George.
Sibby George. Yeah.
Sibby George. You felt really bad for him because he's basically doing what a Sambit Patra does every night. Like that was the brief. It is no different from what Sambit Patra, Sanju Verma, all these guys do every night on prime time. A specific question is thrown at you. You go about yoga and COVID and this and that. And the thing is that I think why they do this, like what Suhasini was saying, makes so much sense. Why did you not prepare? You had a full 8 hours to really, and you've invited that journalist, the journalists that have come, you know she's going to ask a question. You could really kind of give a response that could actually school her, quote unquote. The reason why they don't do that is because they know that they can win the argument because they have the entire media eating out of their hands. Because right after that press conference, if you saw what all our media put out to our own national audience was, a Norwegian journalist schooled, taught a lesson, shut up by the, MEA, that whole laser light thing that she's been schooled and she's been shut up.
There was a good one that said, Indian journalist snubbed by the Norwegian, he doesn't take questions. And I was like, but he did take questions. I put out photos. I think Manisha and I had this conversation. And I said, but he did take questions.
Yeah.
It's just that at that moment, he didn't take questions.
But he did later, exactly.
So the focus
he did, and he also spoke to us the next day, which I'll come to in just a bit, because I think that's also very important what he said about this.
So the focus is so much on controlling the headlines, which you've managed to do in India so well that is all your focus. And you've been unable to do it with the world media, so you don't get it. Like, why are these guys asking us questions? But I think this basic understanding that the world is not going to do or not going to bend in the way that the Indian media has to you. Large parts of it, many are free, but a large part of the loud primetime, segment has completely given in to you. In fact, right after this, there was this prime time about her, this Norwegian journalist, where does she come from? The NDTV journalist actually asked her that, your paper is a Labour Party mouthpiece. So who are you to talk about press freedom? I'm like, you're sitting on a channel owned by Adani with no sense of irony. You're with sternness, like, who are you? How many books have you read about India? How many have you read about Norway?
About anything.
And that journalist was, at least she's young. Look, she's young. And I agree that she may not have the full context of India. I don't think the index is as simple. There's lots of nuances.
Yeah.
I completely agree with Suhasini. Also, the question of what about human rights is too vague. I mean, a journalistic question should be way more specific if you want to corner someone. But the fact is that she's come, and she said it also, I am a small town journalist, but you underestimate the power a small town journalist can have in Norway. I can get an accreditation and ask questions of the highest of authorities. And that's the power of media in our country. Instead of making that the focus, and instead of really thinking that 12 years, forget what the Prime Minister has done abroad, you yourself have not been able to take questions from him. He's not given you a single press conference. How is it okay for the last 12 years to have a government, a Prime Minister, who's refused to engage with you, and every time you do a one-on-one on him, he does throw a sly one at you.
Yeah,
like this Rahul Kanwal interview.
He treats you like shit and you're happy to be treated like shit.
You know what? So Asni was talking about Rahul Kanwal, Anjana, all these guys are in a round table, and he just tears through them when they ask a simple question कि आपका एजेंडा है, आप लोग जो ट्वीट करते हो सबको पता है क्या है, आप लोग क्यों डर रहे हो इकोसिस्टम से. So he's schooling you You're okay taking all of that. And the fact that the headline is that a Norwegian journalist asked PM questions rather than the Prime Minister has not taken questions for the last 12 years
Yeah.
just says you don't need any index.
Sure.
This tells you
That's
everything
enough.
that you need to know about, your own country and where you stand. And I think it was really something to see all of these guys, Sudhir, Anjana, like, who is she? Who is she to ask questions? ये कहाँ से आ गई? इनका तो कोई
And this is
followers नहीं
again
है.
the very Indian thing. तुम्हारी औकात क्या है
हाँ.
mindset. And again, this comes from caste system.
Yeah.
Completely
Hierarchy
hierarchical
and,
society.
Can I just jump in because there was one more part to this Aankho Dekha Hal that I wanted to talk about. So the next day, there was the Nordic India Summit, a very serious event, and there was, a sort of closed door meetings between Prime Minister Modi and the Prime Ministers of Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, Finland, Norway, right? 5 Nordic countries. Now, these are all countries that are used to this. And if anyone wants to, please watch Borgen, because you get a sense of how the media-prime minister relationship is in these countries. There's 6 of them standing on that podium. And there's only one place where there are 2 teleprompters. So I felt like, firstly, it was very clear what was going to come. Hella was at that event as well, but she didn't say anything. My guess is she probably felt discretion the better part of valor, unless her own government said, don't embarrass us on this international
Which is also possible.
stage, which is also possible. But they were nervous enough. So I saw that our officials had placed themselves around her and, that kind of thing. But what was interesting is what happened after. So Prime Minister Modi spoke. They all had prepared texts, 2 minutes each, but none of the others needed a teleprompter. He did it off the teleprompter. And then after he left, it was really interesting because all the other prime ministers stuck around. And I think the Denmark Prime Minister is the only exception because she's a caretaker Prime Minister. So she told us very honestly, I can't take questions. But the Prime Minister of Finland, of Iceland, of Sweden, and of course Norway, all stuck around for about an hour after that, speaking to various channels, speaking to various media. So when all of this happened, the Norwegian media, of course, pounced on their prime minister and asked him. But again, it was very angry conversations in Norwegian, so I didn't follow what was said over there. I think Hella has put out her version of what he said to her. But I'll tell you what he said to me when I asked. I said, you've obviously had to answer questions here about why you haven't had a press conference. So my question was to him about him not holding a press conference. And he said to me, I am speaking to you. I have given you all an interview yesterday as well. All my Nordic, this is all on the record, all my Nordic colleagues have spoken. And, it is true. I literally spoke to each one of them. I have spoken to you. Now, if Prime Minister Modi does not do press conferences, there may be traditional differences between India and us. But it is not for us. As our host, we have to respect the traditional differences.
Yeah, exactly.
And then turned around to me and said, that's something for India to resolve and you should take it up with your Prime Minister.
Exactly.
So I was like, but I'm asking you for yours, but by then he had walked
but that's
away.
fair enough answer. Anand, what do you make of all this fracas? I don't know whether you watched it. So many video clips.
I think in the larger context of things beyond the media bubble, it's a non-event. Means non-event in the sense that there are 2 kind of theatrics going on. And say the diplomat who said that was obviously incensed. He was not in control of his words. Whatever he said could have been said differently. It is just like, say, someone yelling and screaming, someone in your office or at home, so not making much sense. And the theatrics was from journalists' side also. So it was a good headline, but in the larger context of foreign relations, it's a non-event. Second thing is that of course, the political cultures differ, but any country, there is nothing like that you have to answer. Means question. It is particularly in India and many countries that you have to answer. You have a right to silence. It is better to answer, but you have a right to silence or avoid a question. So that could be done. Means journalists don't have the statutory power that you have to answer me.
Yeah, that's obvious. Otherwise, it would be stated in law.
Yes. So
See, anything that is a debate is a convention. If it's a rule, then it's not a debate.
yes. So and I think like in Operation Sindoor, or these questions about human rights, media freedom, or larger context of, say, territorial questions, Kashmir, these things have been handled very well by Indian diplomats on different fora. Not with some other kind of impulse, but I think Indian diplomats, Indian Foreign Service officers are among the best in the world, and many acknowledge it. You like Operation Sindoor, you see the performance of Vikram Doraiswamy in BBC studio or in English studios. He was one of the best articulators of Indian position. He is now our ambassador to Beijing. Or in UN, Ruchika Kamboj, Syed Akarabuddin, and many. So it's not that, I think that diplomat had an off day, and we should not generalize that. Fourth is the, like, I think the Scandinavian countries, Norway and this, they have a two-track thing. One way, of course, they have to maintain the bilateral relationships. They will give you the highest civilian award and something like that. But they are also advertisers of what they think is their soft power. They are home to Nobel Prizes. They are home to certain, say, liberal endorsement of certain values. Their embassies in India are particularly advertisers. If you write they ask university professors, columnists to write in certain way. I know a few writers who have been asked to write in a certain way about certain things. They are also advertisers in a way. So they will, but at the same time, they have to be also in the business of, say, real business of bilateral relations. So they will also, with the heads of government, they will have a different kind of relation that we saw, give you this award, that award. Fourth thing is that we have to be less touchy about what people say. Means you will not control neither the world opinion nor the Indian opinion. That any realist will know. So like Ms. Haidar said, that like China, Russia, if you are really a serious global aspirant to power, you should be less touchy about these things. And why we are so touchy about that, someone is calling us this, give your best defense and move on. That's all.
So I think your last point, I'll just quickly refer to and then come back to Suhasini for the second part of what she was talking about. I think one is, of course, there is no that you have to answer, but that is understood in democracy. Just like until Biden made the rule, someone like Trump can completely challenge the electors, don't have to endorse, what the states in a presidential election. It was not written in rule, it was a convention. That as an elector, whatever is the result of my state, all those votes go to the White House. It was not a rule, it was a convention. But when they realized someone as insane as Trump can tell the elector, you don't have to endorse what your state said. All those votes will come to the Republicans, then they made it a rule. Many things are conventions and not rules. But they are conventions because it is assumed that anyone with half a brain and a little bit of education will follow that convention. There is no convention that I can't step into a press conference and tell the Prime Minister, oh, you're such a moron, why are you such stupid? But I will not ask that question. It's convention. There's no rule that I can't ask that question. So to talk about that there's no one has the right, then you don't become Prime Minister. That's convention. So something that is convention and not a rule is what is argued about. Otherwise, it's black and white. There's no argument. Right? So, and the second thing is, and I'll go back to Suhasini after this. The last thing that I said, don't be bothered. India can't be that because the problem is the mindset of losers comes from the top. You have nothing to show. I'll give you an example. Every argument becomes, we used to have this, we were sone ki chidiya, we were yoga, we were sar pe baitho. The biggest losers I know will tell me, and amongst them are the Banas of Rajasthan, who I know many of, who do nothing except drink alcohol and have done nothing all their lives. But when you tell them, you're such losers, my great-grandfather was Bapji's second wives, third husbands, we used to have this. The biggest losers will tell you what their forefathers did, not what have they done. And that is the response to every criticism of this government. This is what we were 100 years ago. Also, there's no record of that. But we invented internet. We did this. We did that. Abhe, tumne kya kiya batao yaar? And that mindset has permeated the top of our, decision makers and is slowly finding its way down. Yeah, you were saying, Suhasini, on the other aspect, like you said, you'll come back to.
Yeah, so so that was what the Norwegian said when he said there's this traditional difference, that it's cultural. Firstly, I think, by the way, that is much more bigotry than what other people have gotten upset about by this young journalist saying it, because the prime minister of a country is saying essentially you're culturally different, so you don't have the same kind of democracy as I do. Democracy is a modern construct. It has nothing to do with tradition, culture, mother of democracy.
Not to say it's such a dumb thing to say.
Yeah, exactly. My point is, why are we feeding into this bigotry and saying, yeah, we are not the same? It's, then you have democracy with Chinese characteristics. So democracy with Indian characteristics of the last 12 years means I don't take press conferences. So that was one point I want to make. Second, I do take Anand's point that there is constantly going to be a desire to push soft power from these countries, and their soft power does come from the idea of democracy, which frankly we do too. At G20, for example, we had an entire exhibition on how democracy is centered in India. Prime Minister Modi's speech to the Nordics was, we actually are natural partners because we care about democracy. Now, if that is the case, then you have to care about the same democracy. You can't be, but today my democracy is more like what Xi Jinping does, but tomorrow I have the same thing with you. And the third thing I do want to make is differentiate between journalists and, the kind of expertise that you were talking about being, paid for. Because, and I've been saying this to Abhinandan a lot, as a journalist for the last 12 years, the constant refrain that we get is you are questioning the government because you are no longer on the Prime Minister's plane. And my question is, again, turn this around. You are the taxpayer. You are paying for the Prime Minister's plane. You are paying for that plane to go with 30 empty seats that used to carry journalists on it. So you might think that I am giving up some great foreign trip, and I'll be honest, all of us do enough foreign trips in our lifetime, covering stories around the world. That is not, that's not the reason why we want to cover. It's our job. It's my job to be in these places and to look at the diplomacy up close, to look at how leaders are dealing with each other and what India's position is, on various things. So that is my job. I will not complain about how I do my job and how difficult it is to do it with the lack of access. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying that this idea that somehow this free trip is coming, when actually speaking, go back to, I'm not talking just about myself, all my colleagues. Go back and find out how many stories all of us filed. I think I did about 14 stories in 3 days. Now, the fact is, television, on video and as well as print, the fact is we are working. It's not about, whether you got on the Prime Minister's plane and, these imagined ideas of us sitting over there eating caviar in one hand, I'm vegetarian, and drinking the best of whiskeys. And that is my real issue with the kind of pushback. Again, it is not about questioning the government that says, I will not take journalists with me, even though I have empty seats on my plane. I've now got 2 planes. I've got in one of the planes a press conference room, I kid you not.
But
I will not. Yes, I will not take anything but camera people from the 2 official channels. So my real question is, turn this around. Ask that question, because we are taxpaying citizens also. It's not just about what journalists feel, or as Anand said, is a media bubble. It is about what you as a taxpayer expect from your government. And if they're not able to do that, the least we can do is question them about it. I'm not comparing to previous prime ministers. And the fact is, nobody was actually, the people who were on that plane, nobody was saying great things about the government. I can remember both Prime Minister Vajpayee and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh answering questions that were about local politics and very critical to them on the Prime Minister's plane, because they didn't see it as the personal vehicle of only a Prime Minister. It was a publicly funded vehicle, and therefore having journalists, as Abhinandan said quite rightly, is part not just of a convention, it is part of the construct of democracies. Democracies are meant to have these checks and balances. So I don't think media is irrelevant just because somebody can tweet what they feel or put out their own videos of what they feel. The media is there to mediate, to understand what your message is, to question that message, and then to put out what they see as a sort of more holistic version of it. I'll stop with my semi-type diatribe there.
Right. No, but yeah, go ahead, Manisha.
There are two things I want to do. One, on whether our Indian diplomats being capable of answering questions and being smart and putting out Indian position. All that is well taken, but the question here is not the capability of our diplomats. And like I said, I feel actually bad for this MEA gentleman who essentially had to do what a BJP spokesperson is expected to do. The question is very specific of why the Prime Minister is not taking questions. That has to be answered by the Prime Minister. The government is responsible for that. And one should take great exception to what the Prime Minister, the Norwegian Prime Minister said. It's your tradition. It's not our tradition. 2014, before that, we had press conferences, very lively press conferences. In fact, we have very young people joining News Laundry. And, we often show them the January 2014 press conference, the last one we had that Manmohan took. And they're always amazed that, wow, journalists did this. So it is absolutely not our tradition. In fact, even Atal Bihari Vajpayee, after the Ram Mandir thing had happened, all Advani, Vajpayee, all these guys took questions from people today who are like, whatever liberal, Libyans, elite, whatever, Gujarat.
After the Gujarat riots, Prime Minister Vajpayee.
So our tradition has not been that. Why are we accepting that this is your tradition? Somebody in the last 12 years has made it the norm, but that's not the tradition. And on what Suhasini was saying, I remember that when this whole thing had stopped, of journalists being taken with the Prime Minister for foreign, engagements, which should be the norm everywhere, because not only do you get to report on what the event or the trip is supposed to be, but you also get an understanding of what our strategy is. What are we really thinking of when we're talking about, looking at the world, and especially with this government where it's such a focus, what the world thinks about you, how we're taking over the world. I remember at that time there were journalists who were celebrating this, that good, we have stopped these trips of these.
I know.
Why?
But that was those were Anand Raghunathan type people who know very little
this is
about
something
journalism.
very amazing that has happened, that we've stopped these.
Those types,
it's not a free trip.
Just like, he sat on the Hafta once and said that journalism should be a part-time profession because otherwise you will get totally compromised. And I was like, dude, do you know how a story is done? He says, I can be a journalist. On Hafta, I can be a journalist being a scientist. Writing a pretty column, paying your opinion, which I do all the time, is not journalism. You know how long it takes to cover a story on the ground. But most commentators who appear on panels, they've never done a fucking ground report in their lives. You tell them to do one, it'll take them 21 days to put out like 1,000 words.
And forget foreign MEA correspondence. Reporters covering parliament say that we don't have the access that we used to have earlier. We could go, move inside.
That to happen also when they removed that thing. And then they got it back because there was so much outrage. Yes, Anand, to you before we give the last word to our guest Suhasini.
No, I don't think it's a norm. I think it is the government headed by the Prime Minister has a different style or a different memory of media. There can be different theories of it with his engagement of media, with media. And he has a style, and it's not even permanent, maybe with the regime change. So it's not a very permanent thing. He has a particular style or memory of media or terms of engagement. But Second thing is that I don't think the MEA spokespersons or diplomats act like BJP spokespersons. No, I think they represent the country. Sometimes the party in power in Delhi's line coincides with what's the national line. It can happen with any government, whether it's a Congress government or BJP government or that particular press conference, he was all over the place because of I think incensed. Yes, he was not in control of words. He could have put it in 3-4 sentences also. So I would just give him a bit more sympathetic say concession that it was an off day to him, for him.
Right. So, Suhasini, last word to you and then your recommendation, please.
I mean, my last word is simply our job as journalists is not to accept. It is to question, is to push our boundaries, to try and do things in different ways, to keep applying for interviews even if you don't get them. And we are able to say this about MEA officials because they're out there. The MEA spokesperson has a briefing once a week, sometimes twice a week. The Foreign Secretary has addressed us. The MEA Secretary, Sibi George, really took time to, I think that one press conference went on for more than an hour and a half. The question is that we do not now, even the External Affairs Minister doesn't do interviews that are he comes on these conclaves, but he doesn't really do too many interviews where there are follow-ups. Although he used to be a lot more prolific. It's just more recent that we haven't seen him as much. But we have to keep questioning. We have to keep asking. We have to say, why are we not on that plane? Why is the Prime Minister not doing press conferences? And if this Norway visit reminded me of something, it is to not normalize this behavior. To not normalize a government saying, I don't need to answer your questions, because then we have a duty to tell people the government is not answering this question. In every one of our reports, we must be able to say we asked the question and it was not responded to. I agree with Anand completely that it's anyone's prerogative whether they want to answer a question at a certain time or not. But it's not okay for us as journalists to just be accepting of it. Okay, that's my word on that.
And your recommendation for the week?
As I said, please watch Borgen, the whole series. There are 3 parts to the series. Because it does remind you, this is not very different from how India has been for a large part of its, democratic republic history. So I think we need to remind ourselves, we need to be less cynical about the idea ki ye to ab aise hi hai. We need to be a little more questioning of why things are the way they are. And so I'd say, yeah, definitely watch Borgen. In terms of journalism, there's so much out there. Bob Woodward, every few years has a book out about dealing with different presidents in the US. Not to say we don't have that in India. We have a very, very proud tradition in India as well. The entire genre of emergency literature is just about that. It's just about what the Indian press refused to take lying down, went to jail for, and lived to tell the tale. So I think I would say, there are a number of books as well about the Indian emergency that I would recommend.
Thank you so much, Suhasini,
Thank you
for making the time, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Right. With that, I just want to quickly tell our audience that there are 3 kinds of cockroach. Amitabh Bachchan had said in Hum, ek gutter cockroach, ek society cockroach.
Really? ये dialogue है? मैंने नहीं देखा.
Dialogue? You haven't seen Hum?
I don't remember Hum. Maybe
Termination
I've seen it
papers
again.
lao, Manisha ke. She has to resign from her position at Newslaundry ASAP.
I have not seen Hum.
Okay, so there's a very long comedy sequence and no one did comedy quite like Amitabh Bachchan drunk.
एक फिनिट से मर जाता है.
हाँ, 1 minute से मर जाता है, एक society को. Anyway, but I'm talking about American cockroach is called Periplaneta americana. The German cockroach is called Blatella germanica.
What?
And the Oriental cockroach is called Blatta orientalis. So I'm guessing.
Oriental cockroach is what you get in Delhi, I guess,
So,
in India.
so whoever's the founder of the party, please also specify which type you are before you are accused of being an American agent and that you are Periplaneta Americana. That's my advice. But just want to remind everybody again that please subscribe and pay to keep news free. See the work that our reporters, our journalists, our editors do, our producers as well, the podcasts we put out. World Cup is around the corner. We've done one season of Let's Talk About Indian Football. We're going to be doing one more season. Write into us at podcast@newslaundry.com and tell us who we should interview for that series. And this Hafta is free. Share it with your friends, family, relatives, so that they also understand why they must pay to keep news free. QR code, as usual, and link. Right, now let's get to the emails. We only entertain the feedback, criticism, suggestions of our subscribers. So if you're a subscriber, you can mail us at podcasts@newslaundry.com. I repeat, podcasts@newslaundry.com. In the subject line, please write Hafta, or you can click on the link in the show notes below and a window will pop up. You can give us your feedback there. Please keep it limited to 150 words so we can include as many mails as possible. Manisha has curated this week's emails.
Yes. So first email is from Karthik, who says, long time subscriber, 11 years. Yay. And well-wisher.
Wow.
Recent assembly results highlight a worrying trend. Opposition parties are increasingly becoming Muslim parties of Muslim voters as Hindus consolidate behind BJP. My question, how important is it for opposition leaders to adopt the language of Hindu faith and cultural symbolism in their political communication? I'm from Andhra, where politicians across parties routinely use Hindu cultural references to argue for values like tolerance. It works. This also explains why South Indian film stars strike a political chord. Since each state is defined by its language, a star's connection with that state's audience is far more intimate than a pan-North Indian figure like Amitabh Bachchan spread across multiple Hindi-speaking states. Congress's elite leadership completely missed this, hindering their mass connect. Modi has mastered this. Gandhi used similar methods masterfully during the freedom movement. In fact, I was just going to come to that before, like, असली राम वो तो गांधी ने दिया था. What is the word? Ram Rajya. Ram Rajya was Gandhi's kind of.
Karthik, I will just say that in fact, we've discussed in Hafta, this is one of the criticisms I have of the over-woke journalist class, that the moment any religious symbolism happens, they say, oh my God, soft Hindutva, soft Hindutva. I just find that so annoying. What that ends up happening is, then you have the Hindu parties and you have Muslim parties. I've given this example, and in fact, a subscriber had written back saying that there was a context to that, although he did not quite dismiss what I was saying. I said even Obama, who was famously atheist, when he became president, would go to church, hold hands and sing Amazing Grace. You cannot reject religion because when a large chunk of it. So I think it is important, and I think as long as it's not done for religion, but I think this also has diminishing returns. I had clicked a photograph, but it's such a blurred photograph, I couldn't tweet it out. I'm increasingly seeing, I was at a red light standing. There was one sticker which said Hindu, one which had Brahman, and one which said Gujjar. They were all. It's a new phenomenon of putting your caste or religion sticker at the back. I think after a point of time, people will start putting Brahmin or Kandikuj Brahmin or Kshatriya, you've got that. And again, it'll divide up again. But I think rejection of religion and, completely dismissing anyone who uses a religious symbol is dumb. You don't understand politics if that's what you do.
And actually, Rahul Gandhi doesn't really do that. He does talk about being a Shiv Bhakt and all of that. So he does kind of...
He's a little clumsy on how he does it.
I mean, it's not a... And Indira Gandhi did very well. All the temple runs. She was Durga.
Yeah.
So I think Congress has also had the tradition of doing it. Nitin says, hey, that seemed like an abrupt exit of Jayashree. What happened? Where's the farewell? We discussed more about Priyali leaving than Jayashree in Hafta. Amar says, hi, regarding Hafta 589, I was shocked to learn that Jayashree has left NL. I didn't listen to previous episode as I avoid oil news during election result week. Maybe Jayashree's departure was mentioned. I will miss Jayashree's passion and her regal dismissing of all political bullshit on which other panelists go on discussing ad nauseum. Welcome Rinchan to Hafta. Once again, I propose Abhinandan to stop rant against cricket. Even the proposed panel on the topic is not going to achieve anything. A better panel will be to discuss how to use water to fry food. Papa has asked us to consume less oil. ठीक है. Saini Nayak also says, "Hi guys, I was disappointed to find out that Jayashree is no longer with News Laundry. I echoed most of her sentiments on nearly all political issues. I want to point out that without Jayashree and Manisha, the Hafta panel is becoming a panel with all men. I'm all for junior members of News Laundry to be part of Hafta, but I expect NL to be mindful of this."
So 2-3 things. I think they must have missed the Jayashree's last Hafta.
But we didn't announce it.
We did.
No.
Arey, of course, in the beginning she said this is my last Hafta.
No. Even she was, because I asked her yesterday and she's like, "No, I thought you guys would, but you didn't."
Arey, no, we discussed it on the Hafta.
We didn't. We discussed Priyali leaving. We didn't discuss Jayashree.
Oh, anyways, so hopefully Jayashree will be back. I'll just...
No, I'm pretty sure we didn't. Because
Okay.
I asked her
Okay,
this
fine.
also.
Okay. So, but yeah, hopefully Jayashree we'll get her another Hafta.
Yeah.
Although she did promise, she's taking a month, I think, or 6 week, completely no work break. After that, she'll get back to different kinds of work. But she has promised that she will be back from time to time on Hafta.
So maybe it was not a farewell after all. And she may be back.
So, and on the other thing about cricket, it may not serve a purpose. I don't think anything has to serve a purpose. And no one wins or loses a debate. You just put out more ideas there and they may influence some people or may not.
One more cricket email by Shrikant KP who says, "Hello Abhinandan, long time subscriber and big fan. I just finished listening to Let's Talk About Football series and I find it to be educational, insightful and amazing. I wish though that your love for football isn't so strongly linked with hate for cricket in your mind. I'm not going to fall for your rage bait as I'm hearing these thoughts from you for the last 12 years and I'm immune now. I just take your views on cricket as a blemish we need to live with for the sake of free media. I find the planned debate on whether cricket is a sport or not utterly pointless. It may be a lengthy exercise on splitting hairs over definition of sport and you aren't going to change your mind. I urge all subscribers who are planning to take part in it not to do it, as Abhinandan will listen to all of you and in the end say, but Inzamam was fat and walk away as if he won the debate." He's actually predicted it pretty well.
Yeah. Well,
He's like, no point. It is pointless. Subscribers don't get it.
I can't disagree with it.
No, means I have said earlier that there is an element of arbitrariness to
Exactly.
because a sport has not been defined and game has not been defined. There is a game in every sport. Like say football, some say beautiful game.
Right.
So they say
They
game.
don't say beautiful
So
sport.
every sport has a game within and every game may have some sport within it. Also, I have played 3 sports. I am multi-sports person. So I played volleyball, cricket and football. So I like all of them. And I think it is just like saying tiger is not an animal. So first,
नहीं, sir, ये तो ज़्यादा-
but what I am saying is that tiger is not an animal will give you a lot of engagement because people will protest tiger is an animal, but then you have to go to the definition of animal then and so it's just like that.
So, Srigal, actually, we had started a series called NL versus NL in the COVID year, where we had people, subscribers of NL writing on an issue, one for, one against, and then we'd put them on a podcast and they'd debate it out. See, as far as I'm concerned, I think one of the things that I try to stay away from is that the purpose of a debate is that someone will go away having convinced the other. That will never happen. I don't believe it will ever happen. Also, that people who will come will watch and go away having changed their mind. I just think it puts ideas out there. It makes discussions interesting. It engages us. We talk to each other. We disagree. So there are many things that emerge from it. One is a sense of disagreeing and yet being friendly. Two, maybe putting ideas out there that make us rethink how we, at least for me, like I said, my position on the death penalty has changed. It didn't change on one debate. It changed over time as I heard more people articulate their view on it.
What is the current position?
Currently, I don't think it should be legal.
Okay.
And it's changed twice. Earlier, I was pro-death penalty. Earlier, I was against death penalty. Then I became pro-death penalty. Now I'm again, against death penalty. I think my position on, Bill Maher, the more he speaks, has changed. I was a huge fan. I still think he's a phenomenally intelligent man. But I think on Israel, he's just completely insane. So, maybe your position on me will change as you hear me talk more and more. See, pagal hi hai banda, pata nahi why I liked him in the first place. I just think that's the purpose of conversations, not to
That shouldn't
change
be the
someone's
purpose
mind.
of our podcast, but
Yeah, but that's not the purpose of a conversation, that I will change your mind by this thing. But you're right. I will walk away saying, sab ho gaya, but Inzamam is fat. Is that it?
that's it.
Excellent. So let's get the recommendations. You want to go first, Anand?
Okay, so I am recommending a piece by Manu Joseph on Vijay, the current Tamil Nadu Chief Minister. It's not the political side of it, but he has gone into a thing that I always believed, and he also articulates many times. He has done it again, that when people attain, say, abnormal success, not normal, but abnormal success. So then, and that's why successful people are the most rubbish people to listen to, because they will then not say one thing that youngsters must know, that the abnormal success is always caused by all other factors but luck. And they will not say that, and that luck is nothing like anything divine or superstition, but alignment of factors, randomness, and things working in your favor. So at that, and when they are not successful, they will curse that luck. But successful people don't tell the most important thing. So you have hours of videos, motivational videos on this and that, and what they so abnormal success is sometimes beyond. It's not an input output device that you put these things and this output will come. So that is for a normal degree of success. Abnormal success is caused by many factors which the successful don't know why they succeeded. So and he has put it well in the context of Vijay. So that piece, yeah, that is my own.
So, speaking of Manu, I think Karthik's was the last mail. Now, Manu is a great example of an opinion that makes you think. I don't always agree with him. In fact, I often disagree with him. But I love reading Manu. I love talking to Manu because he has a thought through position which is smart. I may not always agree with it. And I think that is what good writers should do. And often I think he rage baits. And I've told him, this you just did to piss people off. Like that piece he wrote that all Modi supporters are ugly or some shit like that.
That was Akar.
That was Akar, sorry, okay. But, but
I mean, his position on suicide, where he's refuses to accept that it could do anything with financial distress.
right,
It's a
it is-
mental...
it's- so I just think it, makes you think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Manisha.
So we have a piece by Indulekha Arvind on, there's a controversy that was raging around a Times of India article, which was called The Quiet Grief of Adult Friendship. The article went completely viral and then it was accused of being completely written by AI. So people felt cheated that something that we loved so much was actually produced by AI. And this is something that we're going to face again and again because there's lots of controversies. NYT is dealing with it. A host of media organizations are dealing with it. So it's a nice little column that Indu's written on. Your favorite column was written by AI. Now what? How do you process it? Because this TOI article was about adult friendship and what happens to friendships as you grow old. It reminded me of actually a very beautiful article in the New Yorker. It's an essay called The Trouble with Friends, The Wonder and the Curse of Friendship is Choice. I think it's not AI written at all, but it's a really wonderful exploration of adult friendships. So do read these two pieces. And please do check out the story on neonatal preterm pregnancies in Delhi, the connection that it has to pollution. I think it's a very urgent story that everyone should read and really, hopefully really wakes up people into understanding that this is really a maternity crisis that we need to look at very carefully.
A few months ago, the Dawn, the Pakistani newspaper, had published a piece.
And correct.
And the last day forgot to delete
the bit. Yeah, this is
if you want,
yeah.
I can do.
You want me to make it smarter, sharper?
Yeah.
So my recommendations are the following. One is this late night comedy piece, which, I mean, many Indians also a lot of them, Modi supporters, were big Trump supporters. The latest move of Trump is such a brazen act of corruption. And the fact that he knows he can get away with it. You can read about it, but I think it's just really beautifully done by this late night comedy show, which informs you and makes you laugh. It's a must watch. And we should also start now a show, Manisha, where we take up an issue and we demonstrate the issue, but with comedy. You know, we'll brainstorm on this. I think that's something that we can look at. That is one piece. And the second is, do read up. There's several articles about that. On India not being able to figure out who is going to get the rights for World Cup football.
I've
And now
been reading
Prasar
about
Bharati
that.
has said it's not our problem.
Ah.
It tells you all you need to know about how far-sighted our decision makers are. Like Ranjit had said on our podcast, that, you know, I know I'll piss off a lot of people when I say this. We keep celebrating Sachin. Sachin goes internationally, he's nobody. No one, there'll be no crowds to see him. Just we are very happy with him. But imagine if we had a Ronaldo here. Today, and what is Infantino? The FIFA dude's name is Infantino, no? Trump will take his call, he may not take Modi's call. Imagine if we had a Messi, a Ronaldo, like half the world's population would want to come to India to see them. How it could, you know, raise your economy, it could raise your soft power, so much it could do. We have money to give contracts to Sudhir. We have money to do the most third-rate programming, but we will not buy the rights of football. But BCCI will not be under. Just read up about this and it will tell you all you need to know. All of you who are holding your breath thinking that we will be the next big thing in the world, now it's up to the next generation to make it happen. Our chance is over. Sorry to sound so cynical. It's the
Gen
truth.
G.
Yeah, you're the only hope.
You say that with sadness.
Yeah.
Oh no, you're the only hope.
Yeah, it's how it is. So with that, thank you, Manisha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Amit. Is there anyone behind the curtain? And Saurabh is behind the curtain as well. Thank you, Saurabh. And thank you. Please pay to keep news free, support independent journalism, and please ensure we have the resources to become bigger and better so that we can serve you better. Have a fantastic weekend.